Okay, so yesterday I put up a video and I was talking about the new Alchemy cards. And I actually got a chance to playtest with some of them. Some of them were a lot worse than I initially had um, thought, and some were much, much better. This card here, Angel of Unity, seems to be being played a lot right now, with clerics especially. Seems to be a pretty good, because it's a cast. It's a ability that's on cast and not entering the battlefield. Um, it's actually much better than I thought it was. So this gives another 2-drop for the cleric stack. I know it's pretty full on 2 drops, but it seems to be pretty good. And again, I'm only going on anecdotal evidence and what I've seen on MTG Arena. Just playing a few games of Alchemy. This card seems actually very good. It seems to be much better than I thought. It basically gives you a 3-mana Wrath, even though we already had it with Doomscar when you foretell it. It also gives you the ability to replay your own stuff as well. So in control decks and stuff like that, especially with stuff like Slayer's Bounty and such. Although it's not quite as good with Slayer's Bounty, but at least you can replay it. The perpetually gain. So each time you cast this, so if they replay a card that they've exiled or that you've exiled with this on the first cast, and then they replay it, and then you cast another copy of it, it doubles it. Maybe some people knew that. I didn't know it. I found out yesterday while playing with some of these cards, especially this one. This one seems to be in almost every deck that I play because it eliminates a lot of the aggro decks. Really slows them down. It gives you time to get to your win cons and draw cards and everything else. This will likely be nerfed, I can imagine. This will probably go to cost 1 more to cast, maybe. Or maybe it'll remove the enters the battlefield tapped, which was a huge deal actually. So even if they cast it and it enters the battlefield tapped. This card didn't seem as good. I only played it a few times, and it really didn't seem to matter all that much. What else? This one was actually very good. Being able to just go off and 2 mana, get a 3/1, 2 mana, get a 3/1, 2 mana, get a 3/1, and then tap their blockers. Very good. So this was also good. What else did I play with? Absorb Energy was fine. The majority of the time I found I was countering a creature, and maybe in the rogue deck where you could play this, but probably not. I don't know how good this card actually is. Maybe in the control mirror it would be way better. I didn't play against very many control decks. I played against a lot of Omnath, and I played against a lot of mono white. That's pretty much all I've played against so far, I think. This card I really undervalued. I actually overvalued the Geist Channeler and undervalued the Clone Crafter, I believe. I thought this card would actually be better. Turns out it's not as good as I thought it would be. And this card ends up actually being better. I didn't realize it until the first game that I played. Somebody played this against me, and they played it a few times, and they actually drew. I mean, I guess luck of the draw, but they got a lot of my good creatures and were able to play them against me. And I really lost that match because of this card. Turns out when you're playing really good creatures and then your opponent also gets to play with your creatures and everything else in their deck, it's actually really good. So I don't. Again, some of these cards I feel like they're going to change. They're way overpowered right now. But that's probably the point. Get you to buy into them and then nerf them so we can make something else stronger. This card, the Geist of Regret, was about what I thought it would be. I had played it in a deck with just 1 instant and 1 sorcery, so I would guarantee to get those. It was okay. Most decks that I played against either went under what I was trying to do in this deck or over. So like the Omnath decks were going bigger than what I was trying to do. and the mono white decks were going under. So it was either too fast or too slow. Sorry, it was either I was either getting beat down too fast before I got to make use of it, or the opposite deck was, or the opposing deck was going much bigger than I was going. So I was using Memory Deluge and Diagraph Rebirth with this. So I would get both of them, but turns out putting 2 7-mana spells into your graveyard, not the best. So it didn't quite work out. There might be some other way to play with this card. That was the only deck that I tried it in. Now this card here, Kindred Denial, I was super... To me, it seemed like a Dismiss, which originally was a 4-mana draw 1 card spell. This one seems almost like a 4-mana Demonic Tutor, because generally what you'll do is you'll either counter a 4-mana spell or a 5-mana spell. Now, in control decks or any type of mid-range deck that might want to play this, 4 mana and a 5-mana spell tends to either be, you have Teferi as your spell that comes out. You may get another Kindred Denial as well, which is fine. Or if you counter a 5-mana spell, you can have Lolith, you can have Ren and 7. There's lots of very good 5-mana spells that you can pair this with. So what you really want to do is build your deck in a way that once you get to this, then you get to your win condition the next turn. I was playing this in a Bant deck. I was playing it in Esper with alongside of this Divine Purge as well. It's a very, very good combination. The only issue that I had playing this, most of these decks that I've been trying, was the mana issue. The double blue, the double white, the double green, double black, whatever it happened to be at the time, was the hardest thing to kind of get through. Likely going to need to play, there's a land down here somewhere, more of the Forsaken Crossroads. But more on that when I actually get down to that point. So this card so far is the standout card of the set for me, personally. I like what it does. Countering a spell and drawing a card, to me, has always been one of the best things. The only downside, again, is it's 4 mana, so you take that with a grain of salt. I'm sure there's other decks. People have played other decks. I'm sure streamers and stuff have played tons of decks with this card already, more than I have. Maybe it's not as good as I think it is, but again, with my anecdotal evidence, it's been the best card I've played when I've cast it. Mostly because I have designed my deck around it. But the other thing is, too, you have to try to include at least some 2, 3... Well, you're obviously going to be playing 1, 2, and 3 mana spells. But generally, it always has a good target to get you. So I never have an issue drawing a card with it or anything like that. Or at least something good. At the very worst, most of the time, you might just get another Kindred Denial. Usually, you'll do better. I did play with this. Wasn't good at all. Didn't feel good. Putting a card from your graveyard into your... when it leaves play, never really came up. So it's not bad as a blocker and a filter, but there's better cards for that. I wasn't a big fan of it. There might be something else that I'm missing maybe with it, but generally you don't. When you get to Diagraph Rebirth or any type of reanimation spell with this, the 2/2 tapped zombie doesn't make a difference. I'd rather play. I mean, it's a good filter in that deck as well. Like it could work in a deck like that, but there's better cards, I think, at 2 mana. So this was way worse than what I thought. Now this card here, I'll get to the spell book as well, with what you can draft from each card. I went in without knowing what you could draft, and this Cursebound Witch will probably define the format for Alchemy. I don't know about historic, but with this standard Alchemy, this will define the format, I think. I think it's probably the best card in the whole set. It's essentially a 1/2 Vampiric Tutor that you don't lose 2 life. You basically put the card right into your hand. Nothing else to say about it. It's just, I think, the best card in the set. I could be wrong. Just from the few games that I played with it, it was the best card that I played. Minus the Kindred Denial. But just a few times. It's not really my kind of deck because what I found was it probably needs a different sort of build, and I'm not this person to actually fine-tune a deck. I just like to bulk cards together and then see how they interact and then be like, okay, and then over time. But some people can immediately say, okay, I need 4 of this and 4 of this. It takes me a while to get to that point. But definitely I think this is going to define the format. I don't know about historic. It would probably help there in the black-green food deck, I'm sure, because it basically seems to get one card from that whole deck. So it may take some time and some building, but to me it seemed very, very good. I didn't play this that often. I only ever got a chance to play it once, and when I played it, it was great. So basically creating 3 permanents from 1, and the ability to drain from sacrificing a blood token and draining from a creature from the Blood Artist. There's nothing more to say. I mean, you're likely going to pair Cursebound Witch and the Sanguine Brushstroke. So that was also good. This card, the Gutmorn, he seemed okay. His wording is very confusing. I think even my opponent, when they played it against me, they discarded an Infernal Pact. I don't know if it was intentional that they wanted me to kill it in response, but I ended up getting a copy of Infernal Grasp. What did I say? Infernal Pact? Infernal Grasp, and was able to destroy it. They did play another one. And the thing is, almost like you want to be playing worse cards than your opponent, and you're hoping that they're discarding something more than what you're discarding. So it's one of those symmetry cards that, if played in the proper deck, is probably going to be really good. I don't know where it fits, though. There's a lot of really good 3-drops in Standard and Alchemy right now. I don't know where it fits in. I think that's it for the black cards. I played this card. It was not that good. I'm sure other people have had different experiences with it, but not that good. Same with this card here. This card when a card in your graveyard is put into your hand, I don't know what you're pairing this with, because nothing puts cards from your graveyard into your hand, unless I'm, missing something. This, again, potential. I never tried in the road deck or anything like that. It's possible, but I don't know any deck. I know decks that play cards from their graveyard, but not putting it into your hand. There's nothing specific. I didn't play very much red. This card was way worse than I thought it was. Most of the time, red decks don't have a bunch of cards in their hand. So it didn't really matter. And while it might be a good card for maybe the blue-red deck or something like that, I didn't play against a single blue-red deck. And I'm sure as the format shakes out and people kind of go back to what they're used to playing, everyone wants to play a different deck, different cards. Like I said, a lot of people are playing Omnath right now. Seemed like to me anyway. And maybe with good reason. But this might find a spot in that type of deck, or a burn deck maybe, or something else. Mycena played once, didn't really do a whole lot. I wasn't really playing creatures at the time, so I didn't see anything else played. This is probably the next card I'm going to try to build decks around. The Town Razor Tyrant. It could be a very good card in a burn deck with maybe something like this. That's my next goal. I really played pretty much everything but red cards yesterday. So I didn't really try them out. Tibolt seems fine. I'll go over what you can draft with him as well. I didn't try this card either. I've heard people say that it's probably one of the better cards in the set, but I'm not sure how that works. I think I said it in the video yesterday where getting 4 cards into your deck doesn't necessarily increase your likelihood of drawing them. It actually reduces your chances of drawing them. And late game, I don't know if you want a 3 mana 3/3 anyways, but I could be wrong. There could be ways to, I don't know, maybe exile your whole deck and then only have yourself draw lightning bolts. In some instance like that, maybe that's what you want it. And it's probably not just as a 3 mana 3/3 haste. It's not terrible on turn 3. So, but it doesn't draw you cards. It just adds 4 cards into your deck. I never played with this. I played with Garruk. Garruk was pretty good. It's if your opponent can't kill it, you're basically drawing 3 cards from this. Most of the creatures, I'll have to get to the draft, what you can draft with it. I still don't know exactly everything that you can draft. But most of the stuff was relatively mediocre. It was like a 2 mana 1/2 Death Touch. There was a 3 mana 2/4 that gained you 4 life or something. So there was some stuff out of it. It might want to just be played in maybe just a straight mono green deck. I played it in a Bant deck along with the Kindred Denial. But it seemed okay. It didn't seem the best, but it also didn't seem terrible. I never got to use the +1 creature in your hand perpetually gets +1, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing when you're playing more creatures. Didn't chance to play. This card was. I didn't end up casting it despite playing it in almost every deck that I had built. I had built like an Abzan deck. I built a Bant deck with it, blue-black or blue-white green, and then white-black-green, and I only saw it a few times. It's the same as Kindred Denial, and it was in the same deck as Kindred Denial, actually. It did draw me a card, but there was, I think, one game where I played, and I got to I had 7. It put 7 lands into play, and I got to go get Coma, which was pretty sweet. Won me the game, actually. So in those instances like that, building it maybe with something like Omnath would be better, like some type of deck like that. Maybe where your permanents are more varied in mana cost, which basically they were in mine. I went basically 4 right up to 7, so it would always get me something after turn 3. So when I cast it on turn 3, I get a permanent that's 4. If I cast it after, and so on, I'll get 4 and a 5 and stuff. So it was very good when I cast it, but I didn't end up casting it a whole lot. And again, it ran into the same double green, double white, double blue, double black that I was playing with. So that was an issue as well. Begin Anew. It's a great card. It's basically a 4 mana Wrath, obviously. And then creature cards in your hand perpetually get +1/+1. I only mostly used it as a 4 mana Wrath. There's probably better cards to have played in the decks that I was playing this in. There's a few times where I didn't have a second green source to cast it, so it might have been better to have something else. But if you're playing in a deck, maybe if you just went straight green-white, it's probably pretty good. Anytime you can Wrath when you're playing creatures and your opponent's also playing creatures, sometimes they'll tend to overextend. So it was a good card overall. It never seemed terrible, only when I couldn't cast it. Gitrog was good in some matches and really poor in other matches. Any deck that was producing tokens en masse was just terrible against it, and didn't play that well. They just kept tapping it, and I would get a land card. I don't know if it's a glitch or something. Every time I would get a land, it would put a land into play, and then put a copy of it into my hand, but I could never play that card. So I don't know if that's a glitch or something. It seems like it just should put it right into play. I'm not quite sure how the seek mechanic works, or if it's maybe just a glitch. Ominous Traveler is good, but I think with the stuff that I saw that you could draft, it seemed to be geared towards zombies or vampires. So any aggro deck. I did play it in a control deck because this is a 2-drop. Basically just drew you another card. So you had a blocker, and then it got you basically another blocker. So that was okay. I was just playing a deck this morning, actually, that used Key to the Archive, and I think it's called Teleportation Circle, to basically get a card every single turn with this. I did end up winning the match against an Omnath deck. The big part of this is to make sure that you know almost everything that you could possibly draft from this. Again, I didn't know what I could draft. I was only guessing. Basically, what I would do is target it with the Teleportation Circle, tap it for 2 mana of 2 colors I thought might show up. There was a few times where I had tapped the wrong color mana and then exiled it and then returned. Then I was able to draft a card. But the big thing is, too, is the discard. So when you get a card from it, you have to discard a card. So you don't want to use it when you're down to only, like, no cards or 1 card, because then you'll just end up discarding that card. So it was pretty good. I mean, it basically won me the match, playing this combination, Teleportation Circle and Key to the Archive. I was able to get multiple Day of Judgments and Regrowth and Day of Judgment, Time Warp. It just seems like it's broken. I don't know if it's broken or not, maybe in the combination. Big problem is you have 2 4-drops. So I guess, at the worst, it is just a 4 mana tap for 2 mana, and then you get a card out of it as well, which is really good, especially the cards that you can get out of it. I never got to play any of these. The land seemed very good, and I never got a chance to play this card either. I never played any aggro or anything. I mostly played mid-range and controlled style decks. So when we get down to the draftable cards, so as you can see from Cursebound Witch, you have Witch's Cauldron, Witch's Vengeance, the Witch's Oven, the Cottage, the Familiar, probably the worst card, Curse of Leeches, Cauldron Familiar, Black Cat, Sorcerer's Broom, Unwilling Ingredient, Expanded Anatomy, Cruel Reality, Torment of Scarabs, and Trespasser's Curse. There is a few duds in this, obviously, so you can get, maybe like Cruel Reality, Torment of Scarabs, and like Trespasser's Curse or something like that. So you can get some duds. So what it does is when you play the card, or when this card dies, it gives you an option of 3 random cards from this. This is what I didn't know yesterday when I was doing my set review, or when I was kind of going over all the cards, because I never really knew the entire spoiler. And what I had assumed was that when it dies, you draft a card. So basically it comes up, it shows you all 15 cards, and then you get to draft 1. I thought it would be exactly like draft. So you basically get a pack of 15 cards, and you get to pick 1. But apparently the way that it works is you get 3 random cards that the system chooses for you. Again, I'll go at the end of my sort of general thoughts about Alchemy and how I really feel about it. Towards the end, I'm just going to go over a couple of these here, try to keep this video a bit shorter than yesterday's. But yeah, you can go to Wizards website and see all the cards that are draftable, but basically you get a lot of the cards that are in the black-green food deck. Cauldron Familiar, you're not be able to bring this back enough times, and it's pretty good. So Garruk, again, it's basically a bunch of just small little dorky creatures. I don't know if there's actually anything amazing in it. No, this was the one that it's a 3 mana 2/2. I thought it was a 2/4. This was a card that I kept getting every single time almost, and it actually helped a lot. The gaining 4 life and a blocker is really good. But it doesn't seem like there's anything, this card I got as well, the Underdark Basilisk. I got the 2 mana 1/2. I never got anything that was, yeah, there's no like rares or anything that you can get out of it. They're pretty mopey cards overall. But again, it still allows you to get creatures, and I would have liked to see a little more variety in here to make Garuk a bit better. Maybe something that's something that destroys a creature or destroys an enchantment or artifact or something when it comes into play, or you sacrifice it, much like the Dawn Treader. Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing amazing in it. I wasn't exactly sure everything that was in there, but this seemed to be the best one. Honestly, it's kind of like getting just a blocker and gaining 4 life. So that seemed to be the best card. Thragtusk, that's the word I was looking for. It seems like kind of getting a small Thragtusk. I never played with the Hinterland Chief, although looking at some of the cards that you can get with it, probably can be paired with the black-green deck. Yeah, especially with the Death Bonnet, Gilded Goose and stuff, the food deck. So this likely could be somewheres in there as well. Ishkana, I never played with this yet. I do want to. This suffers from the same thing, I believe, that Garuk suffers from. There's not really anything amazing that you can pull out of it. It's just like some random stuff. I guess Hatchery Spider's pretty good. There's some other stuff here. There's a little bit of removal, I think. Spider Spawning is probably the best one. And then we get the Key to the Archive, which is basically, I think, all great cards from the Strixhaven Mystical Archive. So Dave Deschman Time Warp, Demonic Tutor you can play. So basically Demonic Tutor is available in standard Alchemy, or Alchemy Standard, I guess. I don't know how you would describe it, but funny enough, though, it came up for me and I never took it. Didn't seem like that's what I wanted. Most of the time I always took Day of Judgment. I also took Regrowth, Counterspell as well. Like, everything in this deck just is, or in this, from this card that you can draft is insane. So you're never going to get a bad draft from this one. Only just the mana to cast it. Maybe the turn that you actually get it. Sorry. But it was very good. Anyways, it was just with Teleportation Circle, it was just the best card in my deck by far. Just because you're able to get all these broken cards in standard. So then again, I go back to the Ominous Traveler. I only saw the Socialite and I saw Headless Rider, and isn't this one here. So those are the only 3 cards that ever came up for me. Was the Blade Stitch Gab, the Headless Rider, and the Socialite. Those were the only ones that I saw, and I casted them multiple times, and I only ever got those 3. So I don't know if that's a glitch or not. Just be random, I guess, because I was basically almost able to play entirely a zombie deck within my control deck, just by getting Headless Rider and Blade Stitch Scab multiple times. So that's an interesting way to look at this card. Is basically you can sort of play a whole other game within inside the game or the deck that you're playing, which I feel like most of the cards in this set kind of do that, especially ones that allow you to either take a card from your opponent's deck or generate a card, much like Key to the Archive. It lets you play on a different level than your opponent. So I don't know what that means for the format. I don't know. I'll get to my thoughts at the end anyway. There's a lot of good cards here. So if you're playing any of these decks, sorry. I think if you're playing any of these decks, Wolves, like Mono Green or the Red Green Wolf deck, you definitely want this card in there as a 2-drop. I think it's just especially like zombies and stuff. It gives you basically all of your best zombies for 2 mana, and the fact that it puts it back into your hand. So if your opponent doesn't kill it, it gets to go back when you cast it the next turn, and then you just keep doing it. It in a way, it reminds me of anybody that's played Magic from like Ice Age. It kind of reminds me of Thawing Glaciers, where you basically take a turn off to get a land. In this case, you take a turn off to play a creature from his spell book every turn for 2 mana. So basically, you play this guy. The next turn you play a creature. The next turn you play him. You play another creature out of turn after that, so on and so on. Likely better in a deck that already has more of these cards. So basically, it just gives you more, of this stuff. Slayer's Bounty was very good as well. I think against certain decks like mono green, it kind of lets you know what's up in their hand. So even though you don't get to interact with their hand at all, at least it shows you what other creatures are in their hand for 1 mana, and that's very, very good. Gaining knowledge is very, very good. So I like that. I think there was a few times where I sacrificed it to draw a card, and I never actually got a chance to draft. It never gave me an option to draft a card. I don't know if that was just a glitch or maybe it just happened to me. I'm not sure. But it did happen a few times. And then you basically just get a bunch of stuff. I mostly got Glass Casket, Seal Away, and Expel were 3 cards that I saw more than anything else. And I played this card in almost every single deck that I built yesterday. So to me, it seems very good. It also counts as a clue, so anything ever counts for that, I suppose. But it's very, very good. It's basically a 1 mana, lets you see your opponent's hand, and then basically draw 2 cards. So for 3 mana, I think that's very, very good. To me, it seemed like it's better than Thraben Inspector in a control style deck or a mid-rangey type of deck. Very, very good. Yeah, I never really saw any of these cards, I don't think. Yeah, I never saw any of these. Expel I saw again, like I saw that a lot. I did see Raise the Alarm once. So then we get to Tibolt. And I'm going to try Tibolt out today and see how he works out. Let's see. I was just curious about how many 2 mana spells that there are. Basically anything that, you add 2 mana. So so basically, like with Tibolt, you cast them. So you have 5 mana, assumedly. Like I always try to say, when I evaluate a card, I try to okay, well, it's 5 mana. So basically on turn 5, what do I get to do with this card? So basically what ends up happening, you play it, you pick it up, you add 2 red. And then I didn't know how many 2-drops there actually were, and that's what I would want to, at least for the first time that I cast it. The next turn, getting something better every turn would obviously be better, but the very first turn that I get it, likely you're going to use the second ability first. But I just wanted to see if I did want to play, if I needed something, is there something that allows me to block right away or something like that. And, Chain Brute. Doesn't untap, but basically comes down as a 4/3 wall. So that's something that you probably want to draft every time when it comes up. I don't know how many other good 2-drops there are. There's a 1/3, same thing. Festival Crasher is another 2-drop. You get a Forge Devil, which is a 1-drop. Just wanted to see if there's anything else at 2. So Hobble Fiend. Okay, that's fine. Anything that just can come down. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, what it is. It seems like the Chain Brute is the best. What's Tibolt's Rager? Deals 1 damage to any target. Okay, that's fine too. You get Torch Fiend, which is good. That's something I think should be in Garruk's deck. Something like this where you sacrifice it and destroy an artifact even. I mean, Tibolt has destroy an artifact, so I think his should be a destroy enchantment. Brimstone Vandal, that's fine. and Devil's Play. Devil's Play doesn't seem very good. Although it does go to your graveyard afterwards for a flashback. So that's pretty good. Oh no, it exiles it. Yeah, okay. So again, when you exile a card, it exiles it, and then you have to cast it that turn. That's why I was saying about the 2 mana. I should have mentioned that earlier. So you're likely going to tick up with the second one, and then start ticking up after that with the +1. So I don't know how good that'll be. I'll have to play test it a bit and see. I wasn't sure exactly what you could get with it. For some reason, I don't know if there's a way to actually see it on Arena to see what you can draft from this. It would be nice if it was available on Arena instead of having to come to the website and see what's on it. This was another card I'd never played because I didn't know what I could draft with it, and this is the first time I actually noticed it was a rogue as well. So this might be a card I try playing with today. Maybe. So it looks like you got some pretty good stuff here. Yeah, 7 mana, that's not good. Okay. Yeah. This one seems to have a bunch of rares, big serpents and stuff. Yeah, and it has a rune crab on it as well. So this could potentially go in a bunch of different decks. It's a 3 mana 1/4 for blue. You know, I don't know. To me, now that I'm thinking about it, this could be a card that you want to play. What's the blue-black? Runo? What's his name? Runo Stormkirk, the one that copies Serpent or Kraken, like doubles it. So, you know, doubling. Well, I guess that's a fish, so I thought it was a Kraken. But I think there's a few. Leviathan, Serpent there as well. What does this guy do? They can't be blocked. Okay. So yeah, there's a few things here that might be a possibility. They're both 3 mana. So, but that'll do for my just review of some of the cards. My second review, I guess, after actually playing with them. My review yesterday basically was having not played them. I will say this about this format right off the bat. I try not to be too negative because I think anytime they add cards to the game, I always feel it's good because it changes the format up. The big problem that I have is the game is already random. You know, there's times where you won't draw enough land, you draw too much land, and your opponent seems to play perfectly, and they draw perfectly, and they get everything perfect. And that's just part of the game. That's just the random element to the game. And what I feel like this set does, especially with certain cards, it adds more of a random element to the game. With the drafting, like I would have rather the draft cards be you just pick one of the 15, not randomly. It's a game about knowledge, so having an idea of what your opponent's deck, you know, can have, it basically just makes it so. So, for example, I'll give you like an example here. The Cursebound Witch. So you know your opponent's playing this card. This also gives them, so basically for 1 mana and 1 card, they have access to 15 other random cards in their deck that you also have to worry about. And maybe as a aggro player or you know whatever, you're not worried about that, but it's something you have to consider. And I think that's the thing that I don't like about the format. The format seems fun. The random elements sometimes are okay. Basically, only when you're playing them. When your opponent plays them, it's like you have no idea what they just drew. You have no idea what they just got. And that random element is the thing that I don't like about the set. We already have enough random elements in the game. We don't need to have more random elements, like especially to this extent. if now they're likely more powerful if you had it where you could draft one of the 15 cards, but at least you know, given the situation that you're in, the card that they're most likely going to draft. When it's random, you have no idea. Now, there are a lot of duds in some of them. Most of them, I wouldn't say there's like specific duds, but there's some duds. And you definitely want to draft. You want to see, some of the better cards come up when you're playing it yourself. With the exception being this card here. This card, almost every single time I drafted a card from it, it was just utterly broken. It kind of goes to show you why stuff like Demonic Tutor and Day of Judgment and all those cards shouldn't be legal in Standard. It's just way overpowered. Yes, the combination is slow. Yes, you have to play it with white and Teleportation Circle. But again, at the same time, it just basically allows you to play broken cards. And what I played, there's probably other decks that are going to abuse it way more than I did. Most of the cards are fine. I think the only issue that I have is the cards that have draftable cards in them, or cards that basically, like this one here, the Clone Crafter, which basically takes a random card out of your deck. It again gives decks that don't have access to, same with the Ominous Traveler, it gives decks that it allows you to play. Like, I'll give you an example. I can play this card, and my opponent can be playing creatures, and they can play like Mono Green. And with this card here, considering all of Mono Green's creatures, except for maybe like one, like maybe the 2/1 or something that they play on turn 1, they're all good. They're all very good creatures. So giving this card to a blue player essentially means that they also have access to all of the creatures that are in your deck as well. Now, you may not get the best one, the right one at the right time, but getting this card and then getting, the Uvenwald monstrosity or whatever it's called, the 4-mana 4/4 trample haste out of your opponent's deck, or the troll, or it basically, you can play a blue-green deck now with forests and get the troll and be able to actually use the troll's ability. So for 2 mana, this card seems overpowered to me. It gives a deck that shouldn't have the ability to have those type of creatures in its decks. Yes, it's only one. The mono green deck does play, basically 1-drop into 2-drop into 3 into 4 into most likely you're dead. But your deck is built to handle. You can build your deck to handle that kind of stuff, and while also playing their creatures. So I don't know how that really works, or how it'll play out. Times it'll be great, and you'll just wreck your opponent, and other times you won't. Again, it just adds more of that random element that I don't like. The game is random enough. We don't need more random elements to it. I would rather just see, like I said, when they draft a card, maybe have 5 cards instead of 15. Instead of being random, you just pick one. Maybe that's more powerful, but I think knowing what your opponent will take in a given spot, most likely take in a given spot, is better than just having random chance. But we'll see how it shakes out anyways. After playing, I can already see certain cards being changed. I don't know how often they're going to change it. I don't know if they're going to change it once a month. I don't know if they're going to change it every time a new set comes out. But I'm happy to see new cards. I'm not happy to see the random elements put in here. Some of the stuff is fine. Like, this guy's fine. This guy, I don't have an issue with that. But there's certain cards here that are most likely going to see a change, or they're going to see their card, the cards that you can draft from them, change at some point, and that might be why they have it that way. They're like, oh, this card's too powerful, we'll put this card in. It prevents you from changing the card itself and changing the effect that it has on the game. So we'll see how it shakes out anyway. Maybe I'm talking out my ass. I have no idea. But I just thought I'd give after playing with it a bit, give some more of my thoughts on it. See how it plays out. See if when the next major tournament comes out, or if on Magic.gg if they start posting deck lists from Alchemy, and if they still continue to post decks from Standard. I don't know. I'm not thrilled if this is fine as a format on its own. I would rather not see it replace Standard, like in terms of formats. I know that it's most likely going to, like 95% certainty that it's going to change, the tournaments, the major tournaments that they play and stuff like that. It's going to be the format of choice, basically. But yeah, I'd rather them not play. I'd rather them not have it be the format of choice. But it will. They're adding new cards. People want to play with the new cards all the time. So, I mean, they know what they're doing. Anyway, so this video went a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I thought I'd give more of a final thoughts, I guess, on the set. And, I mean, if you enjoy, it was definitely, for me, I had some gold and gems and stuff like that. So I did get some cards, obviously, and a bunch of wild cards that I had left over. So if not, stick with Standard and just play that. As long as they keep that format, I'm fine with this being a completely separate format and not being, you don't have to play this if you don't want to, and just play Standard if you want to, or Historic. I don't like the changes that it made to Historic either. I mean, it's better than, I guess, having a Alchemy Standard and an Alchemy Historic where these cards are added into Historic. I don't know if they change anything in Historic at all. I don't really play that very often. So, anyways, see you later.